Welcome back to Deep Dive. Let's jump right in today. We're looking at something called pembelajaran mendalam. Now, that might sound unfamiliar, but it's actually a really interesting approach in Indonesian education, focusing on improving the overall quality of learning. We'll break down the key ideas and how this is meant to work in schools, and I've got our expert here to walk us through it.
Great to be back. Yeah, pembelajaran mendalam, or let's call it deep learning for our chat. It's a really vital topic if we care about, the future of education there.
And you really feel the importance when you look back a bit. Those 2022 PISA results were quite something, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Over 99% of Indonesian students were basically stuck at levels 1 to 3, meaning those higher order thinking skills, or HOTS as we often hear. Well, that's still a major hurdle. Only a tiny fraction hit levels 4 to 6. That's got to be a serious concern.
Absolutely. That data is like a wake-up call telling us something needs adjusting in how we teach and learn. This deep learning approach is seen as one potential solution, something that could bring significant change.
Right. So our focus today is clear.
Mm-hmm.
We really want to understand what this deep learning approach is all about. What are its principles? What's the framework? And maybe most importantly, how can it actually be applied in schools to really boost student learning? Let's start with the basics. What exactly is pembelajaran mendalam?
Okay, so at its core, deep learning is an approach that emphasizes creating a learning atmosphere and process that is meaningful, conscious, and enjoyable. And the way to achieve that is by developing the student's potential, holistically integrating their thinking, their heart or values, their emotions, and even physical activity. So it's not just cognitive skills, but emotional, social, and physical aspects too.
That's fascinating. Three key words jump out: meaningful, conscious, and enjoyable. I heard they sometimes get shortened to BBM in Indonesian. Can you elaborate a bit on how each of these principles works?
Sure. Meaningful means what students learn should be relevant to their lives. They should see the real-world connection and benefit. Conscious means students are fully aware during the learning process. They know what they're learning, why, and importantly, how they can regulate themselves to reach their learning goals. And enjoyable isn't just about fun and games, but more about creating a positive, challenging, and motivating atmosphere where students feel engaged and happy to participate actively.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about those other terms? Ola pikir, ola hati, ola rasa, and ola raga. Developing thought, heart, emotion, physical activity. How do these four aspects connect with those BBM principles?
Right, those four OLAs, let's call them development dimensions, they're nurtured holistically through the BBM principles. Developing thought is about cognitive abilities, critical thinking, analysis, problem solving. Developing heart touches on emotional and spiritual aspects, character building, moral values, empathy towards others. Developing emotion sensitivity involves aesthetics and understanding others' feelings. And finally, physical development isn't just physical health, but also building discipline and sportsmanship through activity. Ideally, every learning experience design should integrate these four dimensions, grounded in the meaningful, conscious, enjoyable principles, so we can achieve the 8 dimensions of the desired graduate profile.
A graduate profile with 8 dimensions sounds quite comprehensive. But beyond the HOTS issue we mentioned, why do we really need an approach like this deep learning? What's the urgency?
Oh, the urgency is significant. Low HOTS is just one piece. Another is that we're living in an era of incredibly fast, unpredictable change. Indonesia also has the demographic bonus coming up around 2035 and big aspirations in its Vision Indonesia 2045 plan. To face all that, rote memorization just won't cut it. We need to equip students with competencies relevant for this challenging future. Deep learning aims to answer that need, making sure students don't just know things, but can actually apply their knowledge in various situations.
So it's really about preparing them for real life, making them competent individuals with strong character, not just chasing test scores.
Exactly. Deep learning complements existing approaches by putting a strong emphasis on how students learn, not just what they learn. The goal is to empower students as active participants, build their engagement, and foster a more vibrant, innovative learning culture.
Okay, let's get into the framework itself. You mentioned 4 main components. What are they and how do they fit together?
Right. The framework has 4 main pillars. First, the graduate profile dimensions those 8 desired characteristics and competencies. Second, the learning principles, which we know as BBM meaningful, conscious, enjoyable. Third, the learning experiences, which is the process students go through, understanding, applying, and reflecting. And fourth, the learning framework itself, which is the operational guide with 4 elements: pedagogical practices, learning partnerships, learning environment, and digital utilization.
We've touched on the graduate profile and the BBM principles. Let's focus now on the learning experiences, these 3 stages. Understanding, applying, reflecting, how do they flow, and what's the focus at each stage?
Understanding is the foundation. Here, students actively construct deep knowledge and comprehension of concepts or materials. There's an emphasis on three types of knowledge: essential knowledge, applicative knowledge, and knowledge of values and character. Key characteristics of this stage are students connecting new info to prior knowledge, stimulating their curiosity and thinking, linking material to real-world contexts, encouraging exploration and collaboration, and embedding values connected to character development.
Could you give us a clearer example, maybe within one subject, how those three types of knowledge might show up in the understanding stage?
Sure, let's take, say, language arts. Essential knowledge might be understanding basic sentence structure. Applicative knowledge would be their ability to use that structure to write correct, effective sentences. And values and character knowledge could emerge when they understand how word choice can show respect or convey information politely. So all three are intertwined in the learning process.
Okay, so once that understanding is built, the next stage is applying. What happens there?
In the applying stage, students demonstrate how they can use the knowledge they've understood in real-life contexts. This involves what's called knowledge deepening, expanding their understanding by connecting it to new situations or even different fields of study. For example, after understanding the concept of ratios in math, a student might then apply it to calculate scale on a map or adjust ingredients in a recipe.
And the final crucial stage, reflecting. What's the main focus here?
Reflecting is when students evaluate and make meaning out of the entire learning process and its outcomes. The emphasis here is on self-regulation, the student's ability to independently manage their own learning. That includes setting goals, choosing strategies, monitoring progress, evaluating results, and identifying areas for improvement. For instance, after finishing a project, a student reflects on what went well, challenges faced, and how they can learn from that experience for the next project.
I see a connection between these stages and the solo taxonomy. Could you briefly explain how understanding, applying, and reflecting might map to different levels of thinking?
Yeah, basically, the understanding stage is like students gathering pieces of information. It's similar to the unistructural and multistructural levels in solo. Then, when they're applying, they start connecting those pieces and using them in different contexts that's akin to the relational level. And at the peak, during reflecting, students aren't just connecting things, but can draw more abstract conclusions and apply them more broadly, which aligns with the extended abstract level. So yes, these three stages are designed to push students towards deeper, more complex thinking.
Okay, let's move to those four elements within the learning framework: pedagogical practices, learning partnerships, learning environment, and digital utilization. How do these play out in schools?
Pedagogical practices refers to how teachers teach. In deep learning, teachers are encouraged to use various active student-centered strategies like inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, problem-based learning, collaborative learning, and so on. The key is that these strategies must align with the meaningful, conscious, enjoyable principles.
And how are learning partnerships built and utilized?
Learning partnerships are all about building strong, collaborative relationships among everyone involved in education. This includes teachers and students, among teachers, the school with parents, the community, even industry or professionals. The goal is to enrich the student's learning experience with diverse perspectives and resources. For example, a school might invite a professional to share their experience or collaborate with parents on a student project.
The learning environment, that sounds like more than just the physical classroom, right?
Absolutely. The learning environment has three dimensions: the physical space, which should be comfortable and supportive, the virtual space, like online learning platforms, and crucially, the learning culture within the school. A culture that's safe, inclusive, respectful, and encourages curiosity is fundamental for deep learning to succeed.
Lastly, digital utilization. How does technology become an integral part of this?
Digital utilization means using technology smartly and effectively in all aspects of learning planning, implementation, and assessment. Technology can open up access to wider resources, facilitate collaboration, and create more interactive and personalized learning experiences.
With a framework like this, how does the role of the teacher change in this deep learning context?
The teacher's role shifts quite significantly. They're no longer just the main source of information. Instead, they become an activator, sparking students' enthusiasm for learning and providing constructive feedback. They're also a collaborator, working alongside students and others in the inquiry process. And they're a learning culture developer, fostering an environment that encourages risk-taking, creativity, innovation, and mutual support.
So how is this deep learning actually implemented at the school level? What are the key steps?
Well, implementation involves several stages. It starts with planning, where teachers reflect on student needs, the nature of the material, available resources, and potential learning partners. Then comes execution, which is how teachers apply the meaningful, conscious, enjoyable principles through the understanding, applying, and reflecting learning experiences in daily activities. And finally, assessment. This doesn't just measure theoretical knowledge, but also deep conceptual understanding, critical thinking skills, and the ability to apply knowledge in real-world contexts. Assessment should also be formative, providing feedback that helps students learn thinking about assessment as, for, and of learning.
Can you give some concrete examples of how deep learning might look in different subjects?
Sure, in religious education, students might engage in deep reflection on religious values in daily life. In civics or Pankasila education, they could analyze case studies on citizenship issues. In math, teachers could pose contextual problems requiring the application of mathematical concepts. In language arts, students might research a social issue and write an argumentative essay. For science, maybe they design a simple project on renewable energy. And in social studies, they could compare past and present societal aspects. The core idea is adapting it to any subject, focusing on active student engagement and real-world relevance.
So this isn't just for a specific level of education. It can be applied from early childhood right up to vocational schools.
That's right. The principles of deep learning are pretty universal and can be adapted to the characteristics and needs of each educational level. In early childhood, POD, the focus might be more on enjoyable and meaningful learning through play. In primary school, SD, emphasizing concept understanding and basic skills. In middle and high school, SMP, SMA, students are pushed more towards critical thinking and complex problem solving. Even in vocational schools, SMK, deep learning can be integrated with practical training to deepen skills and understanding in their specific field, and it can be adapted for special education too, tailored to specific student needs.
This really gives us a comprehensive picture of pembelajaran mendalam, this deep learning approach, and how it's envisioned for schools. As we wrap up, what are the key takeaways we should hold on to?
I think the main points are that this deep learning approach is an effort to holistically improve education quality. It does this by focusing on learning experiences that are meaningful for students, that they are fully conscious or aware of, and that are enjoyable. The goal is clear: developing higher-order thinking skills and preparing students for a dynamic future using a structured framework that touches on all aspects of learning.
This has genuinely been a useful deep dive. With this better understanding, it really makes you think, what if these principles of deep learning truly became the spirit of every learning process in our schools? Not just theory, but genuinely lived and applied by teachers and students. Imagine the impact on our students' ability not just to absorb information, but to analyze, evaluate, and create solutions for future challenges. It's a compelling vision and definitely worth supporting. Thanks so much for shedding light on this.
My pleasure. Hope it was helpful. See you next time.
Until the next deep dive.